directed. Dr. Cornu-Labat matter. We have reached closing arguments. Ms. O'Neill, did you wish to make closing arguments?
Thank you, Your Honor. The department has proven that Dr. Cornu-Labat was properly served with the notice of intent of the Commission's intention to order an examination. Dr. Cornu-Labat testified that he got that documentation. He had an opportunity to submit written proof and evidence, an argument about why he should not have to submit to that examination. A commission panel considered that evidence and the evidence that the department submitted about why it should be done, and ordered on September 24th of 2010, ordered Dr. Cornu-Labat to get a specified examination from one of two providers at his choice to be paid for by the commission. Dr. Cornu-Labat has acknowledged that he was served with that order and that he has not submitted to that examination. By statute, once the department has established that the procedure has been followed and that the licensee has not submitted to the examination, we are directed to ask for a sanction, which is not part of sanction rules because there is no grid that applies to this situation. But the statute provides for what the penalty is to be. It is the discipline that's to be ordered is supposed to be a suspension of Dr. Cornu-Labat's license until he submits to that examination and provides the report to the commission. He is by statute entitled to get examinations from providers that he chooses and pays for. And those examinations and the results of those examinations are to be submitted to the commission, and the commission is required to consider those. But those examinations do not substitute for the commission-ordered examination. And there was no, obviously there was no communication between the commission and Dr. Cornu-Labat's chosen providers. You have no way of knowing what information they had. It's not a substitute for the commission's examination from providers the commission chooses, with a specification for the examination that the commission sets out, with communication between the commission's chosen provider and the commission, with an opportunity to make sure that that provider has all the information they need to have and has a description of what kind of an examination it is that the commission wants. That's the statutory procedure. Dr. Cornu-Labat's explanation to you is that he doesn't believe he should have to follow what the statute requires or what your order directed, and that he has in fact done his version of what he thinks the commission needed to see. But it's the commission that is required to protect the public. It is the commission that is required to determine whether and under what circumstances an examination should be required of a licensee. The commission has done that in this case, and Dr. Cornu-Labat has refused to comply with a lawfully issued order of the commission, and the evidence shows that that is the case. The statute provides for the penalty, and it appears from the evidence that the only thing that will result in Dr. Cornu-Labat submitting to the examination is a sanction. And I request that the commission find that he has failed to comply and impose the sanction, which is the suspension of his license until he submits to the examination ordered by the commission from one of the two commission authorized providers. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Cornu-Labat, closing argument.
In closing, I want to bring to the attention of the panel the fact that in your decision rests punishing somebody that made an effort to defend his rights and to demand justice and a fair process. As it happened today, where I have not been able to bring to the table the core issue of this case, which is the fact that there have never been any reliable and credible evidence to put my sanity in question, and I have provided ample evidence, and this has been utterly disregarded. Your decision today will determine if this type of proceedings that rule our profession, and the majority of you are my colleagues, and that limit the way we are able to interact with our patients and our employment places. In your decision today, if you decide to punish me for having stood my ground, you will be enforcing a system that's punitive, abusive, and authoritarian. And it's absolutely non-conducive to any kind of caring for health and well-being, which is the mandate that we all have. The letter of the law is one aspect of the law. The purpose and intent of the law is the most significant aspect of it. And this is what I intended to bring forward today. I have not been allowed to express myself clear and be heard to this point. And it has been a process that has lasted 18 months. And today, I still continue not being allowed to bring forth the core issues, which is that this order should have never been given. And I think the last hour and a half of interaction, all of you are professionals used to dealing with people. I think you can clearly see that I'm not crazy. I think anybody can see that. I have never had any issues with mental health. I know I'm a pain in the butt. I know I argue, and I will not question that. But I argue for good reasons, and I present the reasons, and I present them clearly. And some may argue that I explain them too much, but form cannot sacrifice content. And what I always argue and present is the content that is behind the actions that I take. With this argument, for lack of a better word, I will close my part.
Just briefly, Dr. Cornu-Labat is not being punished for defending himself, and he hasn't been prevented from submitting his arguments to the commission. He has submitted his issues at great length, and they were considered, and the order indicates that they were. The commission has had raised to it, as a self-report from Dr. Cornu-Labat, questions from people who worked with him about whether he is able to practice with reasonable skill and safety. We are not required to prove that he's insane, and no one is trying to prove that. We are simply required to show that the commission has reason to believe that he may be unable to practice with reasonable skill and safety. As part of its investigation of those allegations, it is entitled to order an examination as the best way to resolve whether there are such issues. The commission has done that. Dr. Cornu-Labat, by statute, by having a license in this state, is deemed to have given consent to an examination like that when the commission decides that it's required. That has happened in this case. We're simply asking for a sanction to be put in place until Dr. Cornu-Labat complies. It is not intended to be punitive. It is simply intended to produce compliance with the locked order. And I urge you to do that.
Your Honor, can I put in one more thought?
One more thought?
Mm-hmm.
It pertains to what Mrs. O'Neill just brought up.
Traditionally, sir, what happens is, because the department bears the burden of proving the case, they get to make two closing arguments, you get to make one. So I will tell you most, all right, respectfully. So what happens now, Doctor? The panel members will deliberate in my presence. They'll instruct me what their decision is. I will reduce that to written form. That will be served on the parties. Traditionally, we serve this by mail. If your mailing address changes from the one that we used to send you the notice of today's hearing, for any reason, please contact my office and the Assistant Attorney General's office so that we have the correct address. If nothing further, I thank the members of the commission panel. I thank the parties and the attorney. So what happens now, Doctor? The panel members will deliberate in my presence. They'll instruct me what their decision is.
We are not required to prove that he's insane, and no one is trying to prove that. We are not required to prove that he's insane, and no one is trying to prove that. We are not required to prove that he's insane, and no one is trying to prove that.
That there has been all along a very significant conflict of interest for the Department of Health in my case.
What's the conflict of interest that you just referred to?
Why I'm saying there was a conflict of interest.
Dr. Cornu-Labat, did you have witnesses that you wish to call?
Yes, I do. I wish to call Dr. Robert Fink.
Dr. Alessi, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth?
Your Honor, at this point, the department objects on the basis that this witness doesn't have anything to offer. The department objects. The department objects. The department objects.
Based on the legal ruling, I'm excusing you as a witness. Thank you, sir. So what happens now, Doctor? The panel members will deliberate in my presence. They'll instruct me what their decision is.
I still continue not being allowed to bring forth the core issues. Because you asked me why I'm saying there was a conflict of interest.